I often hear comments or arguments asserted from skeptic channels or atheist evangelists that the divinity of Jesus was a later addition to Christianity, and it wasn't originally the belief of Christians until later. Now, exactly when was Jesus' divinity inserted into Christianity? That's my first question. Also, who inserted it? The answers to this vary widely, but generally the answer usually goes something like, when Constantine took over the church in the 4th century and the authoritarian church leadership then demanded and forced these changes. While this may work for Dan Brown fans, those of us who operate in the land of nonfiction would know that this is completely false. We've seen the evidence, and we've had the evidence for a long time, and it doesn't support this view so often peddled by skeptics. The facts are never quite as exciting or dramatic like the narrative of Constantinian conspiracies, so often floating around the internet, but boring or not, facts are facts. I'm Nathan Collins, bringing you the truth of Christ in a post-truth culture. There are literally myriads of evidence to answer this kind of claim that Jesus' divinity was a later enforced belief from the top down by Constantine or something else of that sort. But I thought I should maybe shed light on evidence you may never heard of before. The evidence of the Nomina Sacra or the Nomina Divina. These Latin terms refer to the Christian scribal practice of writing the Greek words for Jesus, Christ, God, and Spirit in a unique way. The Judeo-Christian tradition has treated at times the word God, the name of God, and the titles of God uniquely in how it's written, as well as at times the pronunciation. Through many centuries, this practice has occurred. How far this practice goes back, however, no one exactly knows because we only have so much data, but it goes back at least as early as the Qumran Texts, but most likely much further. Let's take a look at some of the different scribal traditions in the manuscripts. All right, so some manuscripts we're going to look at are from the Dead Sea Scrolls, so pretty far back there type stuff. Definitely from Judaism, a sect of Judaism anyways, and so before the Christian period. These are found at the Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls Digital Library, which is awesome. I mean, really amazing pictures. You can zoom in way farther than what I'm doing right now, but they have just tons and tons of these fragments that you can look through. Now, this fragment is from the 4th cave at Qumran, and it's of Isaiah. So that's where this little piece is from. It's from the book of Isaiah. And anybody can go here. There's nothing, special needed. This is open source to anybody. You can come here, check it out, and it's pretty amazing. But that's not what we're here for. We're going to jump into the text. And so if you notice in this little fragment here, there's a normal way these letters are written. Now, if you're familiar with Hebrew, this is going to seem pretty obvious to you, but the script is written in a square-looking, kind of blockish script. Okay, that's what the normal way you see most Hebrew written in. But as you get to this word right here, again, if you're familiar with Hebrew, this stands out like really blatantly that it's very different. This is written in an older script than the square, or sometimes called the Babylonian script. So this is like the pre-exilic script right here, called Paleo-Hebrew. Now, the word that gets written in Paleo-Hebrew here is the word Yahweh, which, of course, is the name of the Hebrew God, our God. And so it's written in a special type, right, compared to the normal block square lettering. Now, why is it written that way? Well, obviously, because it's being treated as special compared to everything else. Now, there are many theories as to why it is being written in a special way. One reason I'm sure maybe you're familiar with is that it was a special word, it was the divine name, so it was not to be pronounced. And so they would do some sort of thing, some sort of way of writing it so that the reader would not pronounce Yahweh's name and mess it up, or the scribe would not mess it up if they wrote it in not the real way, so that you couldn't do anything to kind of like blaspheme the name of Yahweh. Or there was a special way of pronouncing it. That's another theory, that there was a special way to pronounce it, and so they wanted to make sure that when the reader was going through that he would know, hey, I've got to make special care when I'm pronouncing the word Yahweh. So those are kind of some of the main theories as to why they did this. But of course, nobody exactly knows why. But nonetheless, it was probably for some special reason. Some sacred reason that they would do this. All right, we're going to go to another fragment from the Dead Sea Scrolls here. It was found in the fourth cave again, and this one is over Samuel. So if you're looking close here, there are dots. Now there's like a piece of a dot there. There's a dot there, dot there, dot there. So there's supposed to be 4 dots, and it's called the tetrapuncta, and that's just the 4 punctuation marks, the 4 dots there. And this is to represent the name Yahweh, okay? But they're not even writing letters this time. They're just putting 4 dots, all right, for the different letters. So this was another special way that they would write the name Yahweh, that they would treat it as sacred. Now, what the reason, was, again, we kind of talked over, they didn't want you to say it, could possibly be the reason, but there's a lot of theories. But nonetheless, they're treating the name Yahweh in a special way. All right, so the next fragment we're going to look at from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the last fragment we're going to look at is from also the fourth cave. Now, if you look closely here, you'll see 2 dots, a little colon, and then you have the word Yahweh written in the square script. Okay, not paleo like the first one. So the little colon there, the 2 dots, now why that was written there, scholars theorize, is because you were supposed to have a pause before you said the name. So it's sort of like to prepare you before you said it, because the name is sacred, the name is holy, and you didn't want to mess it up. You had to treat it as holy, as awesome. And so they wanted to make sure the reader would pause before saying the name. This is the theory, anyways. No one, of course, 100% knows, but they believe that is why there is the 2 dots there. So, a lot of different ways to handle the name Yahweh. Why would they treat this special care for Yahweh? Well, because of what it means to the community, what God means to this community, what his name means. It was not a light thing. They didn't want to misspell it. They didn't want to say it incorrectly. They wanted to treat it as holy to the utmost. And so they came up with many unique ways. And this isn't just the Dead Sea Scroll Qumran community. this is found elsewhere as well, where they, instead of writing Yahweh, might write Hashem. This happens today. Or change the vowels so that you would say Adonai, which is a different word that means Lord, instead of the word Yahweh. So there's many ways beyond these shown. But what I wanted you to see is going back to even the earliest things we have, we can see that this was a tradition that happened. All right. Now, let's fast forward to the earliest manuscripts we have of early Christianity, which, remember, was born in the not too distant world of the first century Palestine and relatively close to when the Qumran manuscripts would have been written. Let's look at some second century Christian manuscripts and see if they too have a unique way of writing. So back at CSNTM, again, a great website to see many New Testament manuscripts in great detail. And we're back here with P66, famous one for sure. 2nd to 3rd century here is the date, so very early on. And we're going to see how these Christian scribes copied the Bible. So if you're looking here, right here at these two letters, okay? So this is the word God. Now, here, though, it's only 2 letters long, when it would be longer than that. So why is it only 2 letters? It's actually the first letter and the last letter here. So the letters in the middle are missing for Theo. Why are they missing? Well, the reason is because Christians wrote the word God in a special way, and this happens all over. So they would only write the first letter and the last letter. So once again, writing it in a special way. And also, they would write this line over the top of it, so you could tell that it was the word God, that it was a divine word, that it was special. So this happens with God all the time. You'll see this. And really, you can just scan through it, and you'll be able to easily pick out the word God, because it'll look just like this. It'll have the line over top of it, for one, which will be a big indicator. So you can actually find the divine name really easy. Now, I'm going to zoom out here because I want to drop down to this word. Now, if you notice, the letters are different here, right? It's not the same. If you know Greek, this will be pretty straightforward, pretty easy to see. But this is the word Jesus. Now, Jesus has the first letter and the last letter, just like the word God. And the middle letters are missing. All right, there's just 2 letters. And then, once again, a line over the top. So they are treating, the early Christian scribes are treating the word God the exact same as they treat the word Jesus. That is no coincidence, okay? Because they repeat this not just in this manuscript, but in many manuscripts this happens. And this happens throughout the whole thing. And there's many, 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 many pages, right? You're talking about the Gospels. This is a big thing. This doesn't just happen just a few times. So they are doing the same practice as the Jews had done. Really not that far back, considering where we are to them. The Dead Sea Scrolls really is kind of close. But so they're doing it. The same tradition that had been done, hundreds of years leading up to this point is still being continued by the Christians, which makes sense coming out of, a Jewish tradition, Jewish culture that they would carry on. And they're and this is an indication that they're treating the New Testament as scripture like they did the other writings as well, or at least as sacred. And so they are writing the name God and Jesus in the same special way. And you see Jesus up here as well. Again, the line over it, first and second last letter up there. And so you can see this in the manuscripts themselves. This is throughout. And there's God up there too. Theos. All right, so this is just sort of an extra fun little fun fact tidbit. So this is a Bible from the 6th century. Now, the real one over here, this is what it really looks like today. So not quite as magnificent as this kind of remade copy over here to bring it back to life. But in the 6th century, there are these purple codexes. Now, they go beyond the 6th century, but this one's from the 6th century. And they dyed the paper purple, thus the name Purple Codex. And they wrote the words in a silver ink. And then the words that were divine are written in gold. And so you can see here, again, the same practice, the first and last letter of the word God and the line over the top, the exact same that had been done in the 2nd century. So it's continued on through. And you have Father over here. But these divine words, Father and God, written in a special way, and the same thing would happen with Jesus as well. The divine name was kept in a special way for a very long time. So this continued in Christianity for a very long time. You know, from what you saw in the Dead Sea Scrolls on through for many, many centuries, this was a practice among Christian scribes to treat the name in a sacred and holy way, which tells you a lot about what they thought about Jesus. They thought he was God. All right, now fast forward to today. Interestingly enough, Christians kind of still do something in the U.S. when they write what should be the common noun God. They capitalize the G, even though there is no reason to grammatically do so. English doesn't capitalize common nouns, but generally Christians do capitalize the G and keep it a lowercase g when talking about other religions' gods. Kind of an interesting thing to know. All right, now maybe you're wondering, thanks for the fun facts about old ripped up pieces of paper, Nathan, but what does it have to do with anything? Well, it has a lot of things to say, actually. Even the topic of how Christians wrote words speaks to us and teaches us today. It tells us that from Jewish tradition to early Christianity, coming out of the Jewish tradition, they have held the name of God, in fact, divine names of God, in a sacred fashion. This also shows you how the early Christians viewed Jesus. They viewed him not as just another figure in the story, but as divine as God. We can tell this, as I said before, in a myriad of ways, but one little way is by how they simply wrote the words in the manuscripts. They treat the word Jesus with the same holy care as they do the word God. So when you hear people make claims like, Jesus wasn't really seen as God until Constantine, or some other of the endless Dan Brown Constantine conspiracy theory ideas, know that it doesn't actually stack up with the evidence, not only in how they copied the manuscripts, but in many other facts as well. Now, before we close out, I would just like to make one more observation. It is little things like this that Christian history is full of. Little jewels of information that have been left to us by those forefathers of old. We should observe the ways of those long ago and reflect on their traditions and ways of life and assess ourselves as the torchbearers of today. These early Christians cherished even the simple and what we may view the mundane act of writing the words on a page of papyrus. I'm sure it was hard enough to copy the books down over and over again, but they went further than that. They took the extra step of making sure they wrote the name of Jesus, as well as other words of a divine nature, in a special way. So they would be words that were set apart from the others. They didn't have to do this, but they did despite the inconvenience. Sacred, holy. These are words that represent ideas that are really absent from our Western world today. In fact, the West takes pride that nothing is sacred or set apart. It sounds stuffy and self-righteous to us today, but let's not judge Christians of the past too quickly. Is there something missing in Christianity when everything is done the most efficient way, the cheapest, the most economical, relatable, common? Do we miss something our Christian ancestors had when nothing is sacred anymore? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Maybe I'm way off here and nothing should be sacred, we shouldn't contemplate any of this. Just let me know. Answer in the comments. If you're interested in learning more about the information covered here, I have some of the resources I used. I have Emmanuel Tove's book here, Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible. This talks about a lot of things, but one of them is just the different ways and the different theories for why they wrote Yahweh's name the way that they wrote it. So it's a good one to check out for sure. Lots of information in here. Like there's way more than just that piece in here. There's all kinds of gold nuggets in there. And of course, the websites I mentioned earlier that I used, and anybody can log on to those and look at it. Well, that's all for this episode. I'd like to say thank you to my Patreon supporters. We are blessed to have you, and you keep the lights on here. Thank you. If you're new to this channel and you like this episode, go ahead and subscribe. Check out our page on Facebook. And look for any other episodes as we address different issues in our world and bring you the truth of Christ in a post-truth culture. Grace and peace, brothers and sisters.